Welcome to our Talks to Anthony Table and Insightful Conversation. For those that are new to the channel, we make mental health conversations and content that's going to be beneficial to your personal development and just into your well-being, right? But in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about why logic doesn't work when emotions are high, right? I need us to take into consideration that when we're mad, right? Sometimes we're in a situation where we add more, fuel to the fire and situations get worse, right? We're not thinking logically, right? We make irrational decisions that can cost us to be in situations where we're more compromised, right? So, when emotions are intense, the brain shifts from a logic mode, right, into like a more protective mode, right? So yeah, sometimes we kind of resort back to what we know, right? But at the same time, too, I want us to be able to improve our ways so we're able to make more rational and more just decisions than emotional decisions that kind of add more chaos to our lives, right? So in regards to normalize and reduce some change, develop some context, right? So first key point of rip is that most people think they should be able to think rationally when they're upset, right? They think they have that capacity, but strong emotions temporarily change how the brain processes that information, right? So like I said, based on your mood, based on your situation of that intensity of that anger, it could skew the way of your thinking, the way that you're able to make the rational decisions. That's why it's important to kind of, like I said, have regulating things or coping skills to help yourself be more balanced in those situations, right? However, this also weakens your immaturity. However, it's also a response in regards to that nervous system, right? So when emotions are high, or even rise, the brain prioritizing safety before that reasoning. So you're just trying, like I said, resort back to what makes you feel comfortable, right? But like I said, I really think it's really important for us taking considerations. Like think about a situation where you were clearly mad, and think about like how you're able to perhaps improve the situation with more of like a rational mentality or a mindset. Right. When it comes to psychoeducation, right? So high emotional states, active, in regards to the survival responses, the fight, flight, freeze, or the shutdown, right? So like I said, when we're in high intensity or we're having that mood of that anger, right? A lot of things are getting shut down. It's kind of shutting down our wiring to make a proactive decision, right? So in these moments, the nervous system is scanning for a threat, not solutions. So we're trying to be able to kind of just like do what's going to be beneficial for us in that moment. However, like I said, we're trying to protect ourselves because we're trying to protect our well-being, right? Logic requires first regulation. First, we gotta be able to, like I said, emotional regulation, keep ourselves attuned to coping skills. It's gonna be able to help us keep ourselves neutral. However, the brain has to feel safe enough to be able to process clearly, right? So that's why it's important for us to, like I said, have regulation skills so that when we're in a situation where we're dealing with high intensity, we're able to keep ourselves balanced out, right? When it comes to positive, practical reframing, in regards to helping us look at things a little differently, in regards to having us utilize things that's going to be able to help our mentality, right? So validation works better than immediate correction, right? So validate your experience, validate your anger, validate how you feel the way you feel, but let's look at things we're able to improve so we're able to have, like I said, a better calm presence, because you could be mad and you could say something to somebody, but it's going out the other ear because they're not hearing what you're saying because of this anger, this emotion, right? So a calm presence helps more than perfect explanations, right? Regulation before that resolution, right? So you're not going to get the solution, you're not going to get the answer, you're not going to get the outcomes that you desire if you're not going to be able to regulate yourself, right? So you give to receive. You can't expect someone else to give you the response that you're looking for when you're presenting yourself in an unregulated way, right? And vice versa, right? So we got to come to each other to have somewhat of a conducive environment and conducive behavior so that things are balanced out, so we're able to have proactive conversation or a solution regarding the situation. So right, so instead of overreacting, this doesn't make any sense, and you're crashing out, you're turning things up, right? Try to see it in a more positive way, right? I see this, that is really affecting you. Let's slow down and take this, take one thing at a time, or I need a second to kind of get myself together, right? Do what's beneficial for you in a situation, right? But we got to be able to, like I said, rationalize, do breathing, right? Take a little walk, right? Do what's going to be beneficial for you to get yourself to get back, right? Because I want you to make the best proactive decision for yourself, right? In regards to micro action, because we know better, we do better. I want to be able to implement, an application, right? So, So in regards to our mindset, like I said, we got to be able to pause, right? Really assess what's going on, regulate ourselves, like I said, lower the intensity of the moment, right? So just realize that this situation, we have control over, right? Nothing's beyond us, right? We can, respond the way we respond, right? By, like I said, keeping ourselves regularly motivated, by keeping ourselves balanced, right? 3 is going to be able to focus on helping the nervous system settle first, right? So do what's going to be beneficial to getting your body back to, like I said, a neutral, calm state, rather than just trying to fall into the impulse of the moment, right? Like I said, it's easier said than done to, when you're mad, you have the right to feel the way you feel, right? And it's easier said than done. But let's kind of, like I said, work on our skills, build, right, and improve our emotional regulation, right, but not just jumping into that emotion of that anger, right, and really just slow down the pace of these things and regulate ourselves, right. So also at the same time too, you really want to be able to, like I said, develop that internal dialogue by getting these emotions down, by writing them down, right? So journaling, developing that self-awareness, right? Because like I said, over a period of time, we got to be able to, like I said, be accountable as we're able to acquire from our childhood to adulthood, right? We got to be accountable for our behavior, our actions, right? These things are not appropriate. They shouldn't be going on, right? I'm not neglecting your feelings. I want to be able to validate your feelings, right? But we got to be able to understand anger and how it's also able to cause a lot of damage, right? So like I said, the tone, the pace, that emotional safety more matter than, like I said, than the personal or the perfect, wording that you're able to display within the conversation that's transpiring, right? But like I said, get yourself to that neutral state by, like I said, developing this rapport within yourself, right? Wrapping this video up together, I really want to take into consideration, that, logic is more effective after emotions feel acknowledged, right? So how do you feel? Check in with yourself. Like I said, develop that rapport, journaling, right? Having conducive conversations with someone that you trust, a therapist, perhaps you're able to work through that anger, right? But like I said, really doing the internal work so you're able to improve for the future. Because like I said, life's kindling, right? You're not going to have every day sweet. You're going to have moments where someone's trying to trick you outside your position. Someone's trying to manipulate you. Someone's trying to provoke you. Someone's going to say something that get under your skin, right? And you got to be able to know yourself, right? Regulate yourself and have those moments where you're able to, like I said, get you to that mindset, that peace, right? That clarity, and realize that no one could trick you outside your position by you doing this practice. So personal development is important. You have the ability, right? But like I said, let's develop that rapport. If you found this video beneficial, give it a thumbs up, share it possible. See you on the next one. Take it easy.